A couple of times, and it's always fascinating. Rob's passionate about the use of process and technologies to improve the design, construction and operation of our buildings. And I'm sure he'll talk a little bit about BIM technologies today, the BIM consultancy that Rob leads. And as an early adopter of building information modelling, Rob has been involved in the research and development logic this approach provides, encouraging advanced modelling techniques and off-site fabrication. Rob may talk a bit about the space house developments, which again is looking at off-site and reuse of components. So it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage Rob Charlton.
That was a heck of an introduction. I've never been a keynote before. Don't know what it means. Probably quite good, I don't know. But yeah, great to be here. Just great coming across here myself. I've just been down at Barnsley. I'm an alumni of Leeds Poly, so it's really nice to come back. It's now called Leeds Metropolitan University. The other thing, the car park is the parking across there. Oh, it was all got all posh, it's really nice. So it's good to be back. University isn't like what it was in my day. But I'm just going to keep it, just stand behind here. Where I have been this morning, actually, which is interesting, it's a strange audience today because I'm kind of preaching to converted here. And I've been doing this as Stephen kind of alluded to. I've been doing this for years, since 2000. I've been an evangelist and banged my head against a wall for many of those years. But it's nice, clear you guys are getting some real details. So some of the things I've probably talked about, it's nice to keep it converted. This morning I've been with a bunch of manufacturers talking about PLM and project lifecycle management, which is really interesting. And they're saying it's the next big thing for them, but it's really nice to see other industries are challenging, and they are ahead of where construction is, but a lot of the things that they're doing, we're catching up, which actually is quite nice, and a lot of the software that they've got and systems they're using we can adopt. To give you a little bit about me, as Stephen said, so well scripted, it was like I'd written that, wasn't it? Very well scripted. Yeah, I am an architect by profession, and yeah, I have got my hands dirty over the years, and I think my drive in industry has been always to make things better, and certainly when I was kind of on the drawing board, and looking around just to be on the face, I don't know what a drawing board is, but I just kind of up and down. The process was pretty diabolical then, and it certainly improved, but still not great in construction. I was driven by trying to make the process better, and there had to be a better way. The construction actually wasn't great, and I was always looking for a better way. And I was kind of driven by, I think I've got a natural entrepreneurial spirit, and I was trying to think, is there another way of doing things? And that's kind of what drove me. So now I've got this fancy title of Chief Executive of the Space Group, which means I'm going to do a great deal. I can just wander around and kind of meet people like you, which is really nice. But how the group's developed, really the same principles at the core of it, but I kind of put a few things in there about how the group's evolved. At the heart of the group is space architecture, an architectural business, as you'd expect. But space architecture has been working in a 3D environment since 2005. We've been using BIM as long as we get our consultants to work with us. So we've been at quite a while. So space architecture is a BIM-enabled architectural business. But what we've spun out of that is a technology business called BIM Technologies, which I'll talk a little bit more about and how that operates. But then also we've started to develop applications, which we haven't released many of them yet, but we're under developed at the moment, and we're actually theoretically got an architectural business now, starting to invest in software, and we now have coders in our business, which kind of was unthinkable in the construction industry to improve the process. Hopefully some of you have heard of bimstore.co.uk, which again is a spin-off, and then more recently Stephen touched upon Spacehouse, which is our low energy house, but we've also now developed Scholar, which is a low energy and prefabricated school, and we're now developing lodges. So we've branded all that together to a company called Volular, which is manufactured buildings. So all of that ties together about how BIM, at the heart of it, is improving the construction process and ultimately driving value for the end user, because that's what it's all about. I'm not a massive fan of technology, believe it or not, but certainly not technology for technology's sake. It has to have an end reason. That's kind of why we're all here today, is to improve the process and ultimately to improve the product and make sure that our business is sustainable. So that's what it's all about. The things I want to touch upon, some of you may have come across Big BIM. It's something that we promote. It's interesting that I've come here today and you will be talking about the RIBA plan of work. And I'm not dissing the RIBA plan of work, but Big BIM is a broader, takes a slightly broader look, and we can look how that can fit into the Big BIM approach. I'm just interested just to reflect on what's driving change, because we are in a massive change process. Talk about the skills gap we've got, which I'm sure you're all aware of, and then just thought we'd finish on looking to the future. Maybe there's a few questions and discussions if we've got time. So yeah, how have I gone from architect to theoretically BIM coordinator, and why have architects become BIM coordinators in many positions? And that, my view, is that the role of the architect, which was lead consultant stroke architect, has become very complex, and there's lots involved in that process. And buildings have become a lot more complicated. Go back to the good old days of when St Paul's Cathedral was built by Christopher Wren. He was a master builder, did the whole thing. But the M&E installation in there, when he did it, was fairly negligible. Now we've got BMS systems, and they're very, very complex systems and structures. So I think the role of the architect has expanded. If you think, for me, the BIM coordinator role, or the model manager, we're going to call it, is no different from what has been taken off the architect's role, such as the project manager, or the interior designer, or the CDM coordinator. The BIM coordinator is just another specialist that wraps into the lead consultant. So I think there is a place for that BIM coordinator, model manager, which is what BIM Technologies is doing, is supporting other organisations in delivering value in their business. So that's really the why that I think we've got that. And then I do see, interestingly, I spend my time travelling the country and get a feel for all the different sectors and all the different regions. And what I am seeing now, certainly in London, less so in the regions, but in London, there are a lot of London architects who are less interested in a great deal beyond stage C, if I'm frank, stage C, D. And then the trade steps in. And we are model managing. This is the first time we've got quite a few number of projects down in London. And we've got a project in London now where beyond stage E there is no architect. We've gone in as model manager, there's a main contractor, but the client doesn't want to pay for his architect beyond stage E. Now, I'll be honest, I'm kind of sitting back thinking, okay, that's fine in theory, let's see how it works out, and we've only just started, so I can kind of report back maybe next year how that's gone. But what I'm saying, that you can see there's a split in the role between the design architect and the executive architect, who specialises. The executive architect would specialise in risk, would specialise in delivery and technology, and the design architect might specialise in obviously all aspects of design and creativity, etc., etc. So we are seeing that kind of split and the roles evolving. What I want to touch upon here is just how Big BIM fits in with the plan of work. Some of you may have seen this before, but it's important to kind of set the scene. Plan of work to Big BIM. We all know about design and build. There are two aspects, and we all kind of do pigeonhole what we do into design or build. And a lot of what the RIBA plan of work kind of fits around that process. There are other aspects, and I think we call that little BIM over the years. But as we move forward, and again, interested just coming from the project lifecycle management discussion I've just had with the manufacturers, what that's about is capturing knowledge, data, information throughout the whole process and using it intelligently. And that, I think, is one of the big next steps for BIM, that we are getting used to talking about data and sharing information and knowledge. And in the past, that was slightly difficult to do when all information was on bits of paper. It's difficult to kind of share that. But if now we're working in a data environment, it's far easier to share that through a standard approach. So now what we've got is a four-stage process as we see it. You can kind of overlay the RIBA plan of work on this. But stage one, which is a very, very important stage for us, let's not think about just about design, but let's think about asset delivery and buildings. Because the first thing is that the client, very important, has to define and validate what they want and why they want it. Sometimes briefs can be a bit woolly, and I would suggest before we start modelling, the client understands what they're trying to deliver. Is it deliverable? Can it be achieved within the parameters? For example, cost, energy, all those sorts of things. The next stage we all know about is design and prototype, and that's clearly what you guys have all been talking about. There's a lot of discussion there about how we use BIM in the design and prototype. We're doing very well on that stage, I think, as an industry. And then looking at how do we drive value in construction, and we're seeing move away from traditional construction, lots of risk. Let's use those two front stages to be a bit more intelligent about how we do things, take the risk off site, and let's think more about manufacturing and assembly. And that can drive the quality up and potentially drive the cost down if we get smart about it. And again, interesting, talking to manufacturers, their big thing is about, whilst we as an industry, and certainly as a profession as architects, are very anti-standardisation, manufacturers are opposite. Their drive is economies of scale. Well, actually construction, that's interesting, kind of the light bulb moment to me. Well, our industry, or our profession I should say, from architects, are adamant about designing it brand new every time. So there's no economies of scale, no wonder we're not driving any increased value. So there's horses for courses, and there's a time and a place for everything, but on some buildings there might be an opportunity to standardise and drive more value. And then last but not least, but I think probably the area where there's the most potential is the operation and maintenance in the life cycle of the building. And that's, by the time we've built up all the data through a life cycle management, through the 3 stages before that, we've got stacks of data to really help manage the building. Now that's a linear process now, but we don't see it really as a linear process. It's more of a V diagram. And if I can just start with, again, just one little differentiator on the decision. Every project starts with a decision to invest. And I kind of usually think there are two types of buildings potentially, maybe more, but this kind of is my kind of musing. There are buildings which are used for to deliver business, such as the supermarket. Is generally there to sell beans, and to sell beans as cheaply as possible. So that's about driving value in that building, that kind of customer. So Tesco's would be interested in that. Another building such as that is a school. A school is there in a lot of ways is to help young people learn and get knowledge. So that's there for a purpose. So on their balance sheet, that investment, so say they spend £10, that £10 will be amortised and reduced down over 25 years, and maybe that asset has zero value at the end. So that's one kind of asset. The other kind of asset, maybe if you work in the centre of London, you've spent £1 on a building, when it's finished you want it to be worth £2. So that's investment building. So that's where you may use an architect that wants to kind of create you something really special. So it's just kind of understanding that driver from the client in that decision to invest at stage 1. And then what that might influence the process that you're going through. So a Tesco's model, for example, wants standardisation, wants higher, lower cost, but also doesn't want to lose the quality of what they've got. So standardisation will drive that. Some clients of ours we've got in London, they want an asset that when it's finished, they spend £100 million on it, it's worth £200 million on the day it opens. So first thing is decision to invest. We go through the process of defining the brief. We then commence design. Stage 2, we go through the design process, and then it's time to start construction. We go through stage 3. We build the thing. It's finished. Now, often in our industry, we kind of stop at that stage, or kind of dribbles out. We give the client a box of drawings and a pile of paper, and that's it. But actually, I think what BIM is encouraging us to do is to go a little bit further. So we then deliver the asset, and the building is actually managed, and the asset is managed. That V diagram gives us the opportunity to collect that data. The very important thing, if it was a linear diagram, we might struggle a bit, but the beauty of having it like this, if we've been capturing the data, is that we designed the building in a certain way, and has it delivered, has been built how we designed it, and then further up the route, the asset that was set out at the beginning, if Tesco was set out to achieve X, Y, and Z, did we achieve it for them? And again, are we really doing that? And we kind of call it, we go back and look at buildings, but have we got the real data, carbon data? Have we got the energy in use? I mean, how many buildings have we all worked on where we haven't got a clue what the energy consumption is per square metre, what the carbon is per square metre? We just don't know. And you can't imagine someone building a car and not knowing that information before it rolls off the end of the production line. So that's the kind of information data that we need to be capturing, moving far beyond just flash detection and all those sorts of things. So that sets the focus, and then, so interesting to see how our RBA plan work would fit across there. Just going through each stage, and just where I think, when I look at each of those 4 stages and the maturity, we've kind of been pushing BIM for about 3 years, 4 years now. I look at each stage, and I think we had perceptions at the beginning, the bits that would be really good, would be really well received. From a define and validate stage, for me that's the responsibility of, and I'm not saying this exclusively, but in our overlaying our existing industry, I would say that's cost managers, project managers are kind of involved in that stage, like developing the brief, obviously architects involved as well. But what I would say is that probably hasn't really been as adopted as well as maybe it could have been, and that's fairly, it's an area to be explored, and I'm keen to see more of that in the years to come, but it hasn't really taken off that yet, and we're hoping to see applications that would help clients decide what they want and look at that, you know, the pound per square metre. That just hasn't happened yet. The one area I would say that has developed is laser scanning in relation to clients understanding what their assets are. So that's from defining what they've got, that's where that is. Design and prototype, I think, is an area that's going really well, personally. I think that's by the fact you're all here today. And that's being driven by, I think engineers are doing a very good job, and architects on the design side. The one thing I would say about the design side is the prototyping is probably less than I would have anticipated. There was a big push from Autodesk in relation to Visari. It just hasn't taken off. A lot of the simulation software is there, but it's still slow. So that's an area of development. Manufacture and assemble, from our point of view, and it's all relative, but I'm seeing massive interest in relative terms to the whole construction industry in offsite manufacturing. And my theory on that, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, is that I think a lot of main contractors have over the last few years been going for a race to the bottom, getting the lowest cost. But clearly, because this, in theory, recession has gone on for a long time, that isn't sustainable. So a lot of businesses have run out of cash and they've gone out of business. So once that's happened, a lot of the main contractors look at it, there must be another way. How do we reduce cost but increase value without staying in business? And one of the answers that they're all looking at is offsite manufacturing. And I think, you know, priority schools, there's no doubt about it. We're involved in the Northern Batch at the moment, and sort of offsite manufacture is an area of real interest for the EFA at the moment. So I think we're going to see more of that. And still a very small percentage in relation to construction, but it's a way to drive value. And then operate and maintain. I think my view on that is there's not much on the market now. There's quite a few old bits of software floating around that are trying to do new things. But what I will say is, from what I've seen, is watch this space, because a lot of people work some very clever stuff that will start to come to market in the next couple of years, I think, and we'll really start to see the benefits of that. And I think that's a lot of people have got their heads around that, and there will be a land grab. And it's interesting, IBM have been one of the market leaders with a product called Maximo that you may know. That's a massive machine, and I think it'd be interesting to see some real small startup disruptive type technologies taking over their position in the marketplace, which is quite interesting. Just to get off, before I get off, it's just interesting to talk about the recession and where we are and how that's driven things. It's interesting. I think the recession really, now this debate with manufacturers earlier, there isn't such a thing as a recession. It doesn't exist. It just is where we are now, and this is how it's going to be. So that is going to drive change. And I was reviewing what has driven the change. You know, how would we manage to get where we are? Bear in mind, someone who was talking about this sort of stuff in 2000, nobody would listen. What's changed? Why have we? You know, why is this room full today? And there's a few things. Obviously, the easy one is the UK government. The fact that they went public with it. Paul Morrell, I think, you know, he stepped down as of any day now. He's just about finished. He'll be a real miss. But the 2-3 years he's been in government made a massive difference. He's been a great figurehead. He shouted loud a bit about it, and he's legitimised investment in technology in the construction industry. So that's great. And then someone like Mark Bew, who's kind of the kind of unsung hero sitting behind Paul Morrell doing all the work. And then let's not forget David Philp, who just travels the country just spouting about it, which has been great. So there's a number of people in government who have gone out there and really pushed the message. So that's great. From a marketing point of view, it's great. And I do think, I'm touching upon the recession, and I think the recession has been a big change. It's forced organisations to look at how they're going to drive value, and it isn't just going to be at lowest cost. There's got to be another way if it's going to be sustainable. And everyone's looking for a way to differentiate, and you know, technology is one way to differentiate. And certainly, I reflect on. Some of you may realise I've got a northeast accent. I keep it well hidden, but if I look back to Space Group, grew out of an architectural practice called Waring and Nets Partnership. And if I look at the competitors, when I started out with Waring and Nets many years ago, our competitors, if I look in the northeast, they don't exist anymore. The majority of competitors in the northeast over the last 2 years have gone out of business. Companies that have been around for 50, 60, 70, 80 years. And the reason for that for me is that they are still trading as they did 20, 30 years ago. They haven't changed, they haven't evolved, so they're in a changing market, and they've kept doing what they're always doing. So the proof of the pudding being the eating, that people that haven't changed have died. And the new companies, there are new companies growing up, and I was thinking of the market that I know very well, the North East. There are new companies growing up, and they're all very young people using technology in architecture, and it's all the older guys who didn't invest in technology who've gone out of business. So the recession has driven that, and those same companies were driving, they're the ones that were driving the fee levels down, the ones that don't drive. Every once in a while I keep thinking I'm going to try and compete on fee, so I go for a DAF fee in, and then I found I've lost it by about 30%. So my DAF fee that I just put in lower than cost, I still lose it by 30%. I've never won a bid on cost, even when I really think I'm just going to laugh here, I'm going to really bid it. You can't win on cost, and it's not sustainable. You will go out of business. So you've got to kind of lift yourself above that. And then, not to be forgotten, I think the young professionals have driven change, and it is. And a lot of the guys have been out at Autodesk University this week, and a few of our guys just came back. I've seen them this morning. Absolutely wrecked, telling me it's all jet lag. Of course it is, and it's very hard, Rob, when you're at Autodesk University, all those sessions, there's other things going on in Vegas, I believe, which I think some of them have had a bit of a taste of by the looks of things. But that UK BIM crew, driven by the social networking, and if you hashtag UK BIM crew, you'll see there's stacks of them out there, and some of them are really sad who've got even on a little a Twitter thing. Have you got one, Stephen? Have you got one on yours? You have. I refuse. I'm not one to follow the crowd. But I do think that had a massive, that social networking and young people driving change, talking about things. I have seen, for example, I'm not going to mention any names, but I think it's great to get Twitter's been great for that, and I think that those young professionals. What we did in our change process, one of the things we did very wrong as a business, we invested in the training people like me who were farts. What we did sort of 10 years ago was invest in all the graduates, and quite a few those graduates now who have kind of come through the ranks now and are people driving our business forward. So it's investing in youth really. And then not just events like this, I think this does make a difference. We talk about it, and there is debate, people are willing to engage, touching on social networking. And then software and hardware. When I was kind of spouting on about all this theory, the reality was the software and hardware wasn't up to the task. A lot of it was theory. I think I saw my first version of Revit in about 2000, 2001, I think. And the reality was that it was a great piece of kit, and we would never try and deliver straight using it. It was just a bit light, it wasn't up to speed. By 2005, we took our big jump and delivered our first multi-million-pound project on it. But it took that 5 years to mature. And now so the software is there, the hardware is there. We're seeing the use of iPads and apps just changes how we can use technology. There's an app for that. It doesn't matter what you ask, because someone's thinking, and that's a great thing. It's not just the case of the big players, the Graphisofts, the Autodesk, the Bentleys developing software. There's a guy in his bedroom who can create his own app off the back of something else, and then go and sell it in the marketplace through Apple Store. That's just amazing, and that's how the industry's changed, how we can get on with that. And yeah, put the back with the vendors, and I think it's great that we've got all the vendors pushing for space, and that I think they all kind of promote each other by trying to compete with each other, which is great. And we run BIM Show Live every year, and we always insist to get all the vendors there, because it just kind of keeps them all on their metal and keeps them investing, which is good. So I've got to look at who's not buying into the process. We know who is. Professional bodies. I'm not being, I'm being critical here. It's difficult. I'm not. I think they've been late to the party. I think the RICS, RIBA have been late to the party. Maybe don't understand it, if I'm honest, at the core of the organisations, and that is really controversial. I'm not saying there's not people in those organisations that do get it. I think there are people who are sitting back from it, not seeing the benefits of the joint up nature. And I think to really get it, they've got to completely rethink their organisations. And that's turkey voting for Christmas, so that ain't going to happen, is it? So, interesting. So I'll be keen to see some of the young professionals in those organisations really start to stir it up and challenge some of the old farts at the top and get them to think a bit differently if they could. That would be nice. Main contractors, again, that's a bit controversial. I think some of them are talking about it. They're getting on board because everyone else is, but I'd love to see some innovation, some true innovation rather than followers. There are some great contractors that are doing some great stuff, but a lot of them are still talking about it and are answering the DQQs because that's what it seems in the question. I'd love to see some contractors really believe in having, really embedded in their organisation. And then the supply chain, just haven't got there yet. Some, a very small minority have, but the projects we're working on, we're just not seeing the buy-in from right across the supply chain. There's some great examples of people that are getting it and seeing it. I mean, a lot of the M&E contractors in particular, I think, are getting it and seeing the benefits, and are actually seeing it as a way of increasing their businesses. Now, you know, if I was a M&E consultant, I'd be watching me back, because I think some of the supply chain fancy the job. So there's some interesting points there about the supply chain, but they're going to have to catch up very quickly, because a lot of contractors are saying, if you think, if a client says, I want a Kobe data drop and I want an up-to-date as-built model, the only way you can do that is by everybody being on board. You can't do it without, if one of the supply chain decides not to do it, you have an up-to-date model. So I don't think everyone's kind of got their head around that yet. So everybody has to buy in. At the moment, that gap's being filled by somebody else doing the modelling on behalf of the trade, but that's going to change, I think. And then the skills gap. It's all very exciting at the moment. Everyone loves this whole idea of BIM, but there is a skills gap. We've got an aspiration up here, and we've got where people are here, and that gap's got to be filled. And to be frank, that gap is filled by paying people more money, because the industry can't train people fast enough. So there is a gap. So what do? We just pay more money for people and be able to fit in. So there is again, the UK BIM crew, it's transfer season, but the transfer season in the UK BIM crew seems to just get longer and longer. It used to be kind of this time of year for a couple of months, but all of the time people are moving around is people just put more money on the table to get, and that's just hard economics, and that's fine, that's the way it is. But I think we've got to kind of see some training. I think, you know, we need to see some investment in training, and I've got to contact off the construction skills group, because that's where I'd like to see, you know, some investment in young people, getting some young students coming through so we can start filling that skills gap, rather than just taking the shortcut and paying people an extra 10 grand a year. And obviously the draw of London, I do spend a lot of my time in London, and London is a different world. There isn't a job in London under 100 million, and there just seems to be an awful lot of them. Someone who also spends a lot of time in the regions, not many of those around in the regions at the moment. So London will draw a lot of people down, which will leave us in the regions, you know, challenged a little bit. It's great for the young people to go down there, it's good, good opportunity, but the regions have got to be aware of that. So that's an interesting challenge going forward. So I'll just 2 seconds, go back on that one. Yeah, so just look at the future. What I'm getting at is that there's no doubt the ball is rolling pretty fast, which is pretty exciting for all of us that are involved in it. And I think what has the big change is that what was the norm in the past, if you'd gone back 2 years, we were obviously very used to doing the same thing every time. I think now there's a feeling that we're in a change management process, and we can challenge normal things, and some of us that do challenge those kind of norms, we are listening to now, and they might ignore us after that, but at least they listen to us in the first place. So I think construction as it was will never be the same. Because that whole thing about there isn't a recession, it's just how we are. I don't think we'll ever go back to the good old days. I don't think that'll ever happen. I think value will be massively driven. So we'll have to continue to invest in these processes. The good old days of BSF and public spending will never come back. So this is here to stay, and we've got to kind of make sure it's embedded in our businesses, and we're driving it all the time. But what comes with that is high expectations. The product improves, the price does go down, we have to work smarter, and clients will therefore expect more. It's a bit like now when you go, for your can of beans you pay next to nothing at Tesco's, you expect it. When you get in your car, you expect electric windows, you expect air conditioning, because that's what you expect from a baseline product. You probably struggle to buy a car with electric windows these days. And that's because the market shift. As we go through this process and some people start breaking from the norm, clients will expect very low air transmittance on their buildings. They will expect zero defects. They will expect to get buildings under £1,000 a square metre. You can't go back and say, well, all right, we did it for £1,000, but now the recession's over, we want £2,500 a square metre, and that's not going to happen. So we are where we are, and we've got to kind of embrace it and take it forward. And then, obviously, very important is as we go through that process, we understand the data, and we really value the data the knowledge and the data that we're all collecting. We kind of absorb that. And then looking at future trends and technologies, you've probably all heard it before, the cloud, but it's certainly one of the messages that came back from the EU, everything's going on the cloud. I think every vendor will be going that route. A lot of the vendors are changing their kind of pricing approaches, and we won't have PCs on our desk on the scale we have now. There were some demos of various software platforms being run off the cloud. So you won't, your license of Revit or AutoCAD or whatever it is won't be run off your PC in the future. It'll be running. It's not, that future is not far away. You know, we're probably doing a few months to get it out, and you'll not be buying a box on a server. You'll be getting it straight off the cloud, and that then goes on to buying other services. You'll be buying services. You won't be making a capital outlay. You're making an annual revenue outlay for buying your software, for buying your processing power. That's just going to happen. That's a definite. So you've got to think, what's that going to mean for my business? I think what that might mean is that businesses will become even more flexible. Might not all be sitting at desks. A lot of people have signed leases that they've struggled with through the recession. So will they want to sign another long lease? So will we be far more flexible? Will people be working from home? Sometimes work together. Will they just be kind of floating around with their iPads? So I do see that changing things. And then the whole database approach with the cloud, linking what we're doing in our models with the cloud and driving. So on those databases, there's a lot of knowledge. So you might have a cost database, you might have a carbon database. And what we'll be doing is syncing that with our models to drive real intelligence in the models. And again, that's not a million miles away. And then iPad devices, the power of those is incredible. And the pace of change. I've just put myself an iPad mini because my iPad was feeling so dated. It's incredible, the pace of change. But what that can do now, you can go on your iPad mini, you can download a cloud version to view your models. It's amazing what that can do. I think we're going to see all those changes and the pace of change. I think the change from CAD to 3D, you just can see the pace of change we're at now is absolutely incredible. So it's really exciting times. It's a good time to be young and with a fresh brain. But for the older people in the audience, it's a challenge. You've got to have a fresh mind and be willing to take on new changes. But I think there's never been a more exciting time in the industry. I really do think that. I think let's not think that there isn't a recession. There just is now, and there's just nothing but opportunity. It's tough, but there's nothing but opportunity for those that think differently. Okay, that was me. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we've got time for 2 or 3 questions, if that's okay with everyone. So if anyone's got a question for Rob, please pop your hand up. No one at take buses. No one at take one. We'll take one from left first, please.
What future do you see for the RIBA?
To be honest, I do believe there is a future for the RIBA, a massive future. Don't get me wrong, there's some very talented architects. I think the role of the architect is becoming a bit more disparate and more specialist. So some of the work we're doing in London, there's some absolutely fabulous buildings and some incredibly talented architects. We've got some architects in the UK which we're very proud of and are working at a global scale. So that is a massively important focus. And the executive architect is an area I think which will grow, where there are architects working alongside others that can specialise in. The buildings are very technical, and it's the thing of the GP, the general practitioner, the doctor. I think it's tough now to be a general practitioner because buildings are so complex, and there will always be the need for the guy who builds a beautiful house in the country for somebody who can do the whole thing. That's great. But I think if you go and design a fantastic building in the centre of London with all the challenges from planning and all those sorts of things, and then to see that client that spends £1 million wants to be worth 200 million, that's a real skill. So I think that, don't get me wrong, the RB is a massively important institution. I'm all for it. But I think it needs to be a bit more radical in its change. It needs a shape. It's probably the wrong term. It needs a great consumer perspective.
That's quick. When do you finish show live and where is it?
Oh, great question. He works for us. But no, actually, what I should say about Finish Show Live. Finish Show Live started off as it was kind of like it was an event for kind of people in here. there's a lot of events which are about the kind of got chief execs and the kind of big picture, and people like Autodesk and Graphisoft. They put them on for those guys, and great, a big picture theory things. We wanted the one where you get your sleeves rolled up, what's the guy on the ground doing, and how do you use the software, and is it really working? And all right, I've heard what Autodesk say can do, but does it really do that? And actually, no, it doesn't. So we're on the third year now. It's in April the 30th of May this year, it's bigger again. I think we're talking 800 people over 2 days, and it basically is it's users. The idea is users getting in and talking about some really boring stuff, really, but it's encouraging them, people to turn up.
I've got a question. Rob, you talk about this Northeast practice having opportunities in London at the moment with sort of technological abilities. Do you think the same opportunities there overseas as well, where the UK can build up the skills and win more work overseas?
Yeah, it's an export thing. I mean, I've classed, we've got an office in Leeds, Newcastle, Hull, Manchester. So we're a northern organisation, but we're an exporter. And we export to London, but we could easily export to anywhere else. In fact, we're exporting to Ashgabat at the moment. We're exporting to, so skills are transferable. There's no doubt about it. The model is, and I think we can all look at this model, is that in places like London, if you can have a low cost base in the regions, you can take your skills down there, and again, technology allows you, you can be in you do need face-to-face meetings, but you can do an awful lot remotely with technology these days. So you can get your cost base down, and you can add that value into projects all over the world.
Good. Last chance for a question. We have a big round of applause for Rob, please.